Welcome back. So the Basic Education Department is set to introduce mother tongue bilingual education from grade 4 in 2025. Now, this move has been lauded by experts as transformative for the sector. Well, to really pave the way forward, we are joined by Deputy Director General for Transformation Projects in the department, Dr. Naledi Mbude-Mehana. Doctor, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Afternoon, Naledi. Thank you.
No, it really is interesting to speak to you, because I think that certainly if you look at the Pearl study that has been done over the past few years, we've heard grade 4 learners really struggling with their reading. I mean, last year we were hearing that 80% of learners in grade 4 cannot read for meaning. A lot of experts have said, well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're not using their languages. So talk to us about how it's going to work, 2025, and the goals that you've set for yourselves.
Thank you very much for the invite. The first most important thing to highlight is what you've highlighted about grades 4 and the Pearls. That is linked to the fact that, African language children in the main are the only ones who have teachers who graduate from varsity not having been prepared to be taught in their home language. Yeah. So that's the first problem. And that is why even in the same test of the Pearls, you have English and Afrikaans children doing much better because the supply and demand is aligned. So the first thing that we have set as a goal is engaging higher education, because teacher supply happens there because we don't produce teachers. So it is higher education that must start the process of transformation as we have done. You must know, Naledi, that this is an old policy of 1997. We just have not implemented it. Now, in terms of the goals, we are saying we are starting with grades 4 because we see the disparity between those children who are taught in their language and those children who change their language in grades 4, lagging behind, and the gap is about 32%. So the first target is making sure that we prepare the system, and that's why we are using 2024 as the time to engage and to also prepare the sector. Teacher training, materials development, advocacy, which must be continuous, because of the coloniality and the mindset in people, that if you do this, learners are not going to be able to have access to English. So we are still busy as a sector with that. The major pillars of the implementation in terms of the targets, one is the preparation of teachers, and secondly, it is about preparing the LTSMs that must be ready, and we are specifically targeting mathematics and science. Advocacy is one, and making sure that we have mobilized the sector around making sure that we open and widen access to all children in the system.
I mean, you must be expecting the question, and I've seen a few articles that have responded to this move by the Department of Basic Education, and I found the word intellectualizing mother tongue language is quite interesting. And it's almost to say, well, I'd want to argue that our languages are quite intellectual as it is, but there is something to say that, to be said about, I suppose, the vocabulary of our languages that needs to be developed, and then once it's developed, made widely available, which is quite a mammoth task.
All languages that are not used for high status functions will not be intellectualized. That's where the problem sits. That if you do not use a language for mathematics and science, then you will not have a modernized language, and a language that can deliver or that can speak mathematically and scientifically. But we've had a program that we've piloted in the Eastern Cape since 2012. It's called the Mother Tongue-Based Bilingual Education Pilot. And not most attention has been thrown on it because people didn't think that this will work. But that study, the results came out of that study. It is a 10-year pilot. And we did this for isiXhosa and isiSotho as well. Meaning that if you look at the structure of African languages and the language families, whatever you have done for isiXhosa will cover the 4 Nguni languages, and whatever you've done for Sesotho will cover the 3 Sesotho languages. So already you have a wide scope of 7 languages where maths and science has been used beyond grade 3 to about grade 7 to grade 9 right now. So at least we've started on that, in the intellectualization process, and we will do the same. So it is important for us to use our technological, affordances to ensure the speeding up of that process.
Yeah, I mean, and we've got to talk about that, because again, we use the word intellectualizing, but I'm keen to see what that actually looks like in a mathematics class. And maybe it's because I simply can't fathom a word for, you know, trigonometry, for instance, in this class, all right, and how you deal with that, especially when you consider the fact that when we put our children through the schooling system, we want to prepare them for varsity, but you also want to be able to prepare them for the working world, right? So how do you ensure that you've got that pipeline going all the way through, considering the fact that you've got this pilot that you ran in the Eastern Cape? We're going through a change of government right now. Will you even have a minister to see the same ministers to see the program forward? Lots of questions.
Fortunately, we have a constitution that has ensured that mother tongue-based bilingual education is the right of every child. So whichever minister is there, it doesn't really matter. The most important is that we have legislative obligations. It's called peremptory obligations because it's a Section 6. So it doesn't matter which political head is there. That's the first part. The second part is the fact that the Eastern Cape is the only province in the whole country that when children write their grade 12 trial exams in September for mathematics, science, physics, they have access to both languages. So that process has already started. So I know it's difficult for people to fathom if you have not been part of the work that has gone on. But I want South Africa to be reminded that we went through the same process for Afrikaans. You know, that pipeline, people asked the same thing when Afrikaans was made official in 1925, you know, alongside Dutch and English. It's a Kombeestal, it's Moordertaal, so it's going to bastardize Dutch. But now everybody knows that Afrikaans kids have mother tongue education. They've always been advantaged in that, including the English-speaking native children. And trigonometry is not English, actually. You know, it's transliterated from Latin and Greek. So it's the same process. Nothing's going to change. We've had that process in language use, like itafile from Afrikaans, and itesika. So we've always had that. As long as you use language, it will have an equivalent if you intentionally intellectualize it.
Yeah, I suppose I make a joke about how, you know, as a Tswana person, you hear people say paper and they say pampir.
Exactly.
You know. Let me look at this challenge now. I'm going to throw as many challenges as I can find at you so we can see what the solutions are. So there's a platform that essentially does, you know, psychometric assessments on learners, and they found that in South Africa, 60% of students drop out in the first year. Now, you've got to just look at the numbers here, right? You've got learners that only half of them making it through to matric. Those that do make it then into varsity, that number gets even smaller. Then 60% of them dropping out of university. What work is being done to prepare universities? Do we even have the universities that are ready to take this cohort of learners in by, what's the year, 2030? 2030 that they'd be entering varsity?
The big dropout happens in grade 4, precisely because of that. And we see this, and we've quantified what this actually means. And looking at the system and the assessment data, we realize that grade 4 is our guillotine year, where that drop actually happens. And making sure that learners stay at school is what you intentionally do to widen that access for them and make sure that while they are learning English, they have their mother tongue as well, so that, you know, they can stay longer in school and they can actually learn. And not just teach them, but they can learn something from that process. So we have 3 universities in South Africa that have started a BEd program that's in multilingual education. So the university have started to recurriculate. And the Ministry of Higher Education has also started in 2023 giving out funds to universities to prepare that the universities are also ready as DB is getting ready. And we are hoping that more universities will realize the need to transform.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to look at the list of challenges and keep throwing them at you. Former Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, you know that she heads up the reading panel, right? And they've done their study into just, you know, how our children are faring where literacy is concerned. And one of the things that they found, again, with grade 4 learners, where you're wanting to bring the program in, is that 27% of them simply can't read at all. So we talk a lot about reading for meaning. 27% of our grade 4 learners simply aren't reading at all. So when you then, at that point, find a quarter of our learners simply not unable to read, and then you say, well, now you're going to read in Sesotho and isiXhosa. I mean, I'm thinking of things like the letter RH, the letters RH in isiXhosa, or R in isiXhosa, TLH in Setswana. Very difficult concepts for someone who hasn't learned how to read. Why not start earlier?
All right. We must be very careful and cautious of research that just describes the situation. We've had lots of that. but very few research has actually gone into the why part. We've been dealing with symptoms, coming from all these research that says this is what the situation is, and very few people have actually done the actual work of going to the why. And linked to that reading and narrative is the fact that higher education institutions in the whole continent have not started the work and the scholarship to a large extent of ensuring that we have pedagogies, reading pedagogies that are specific to African languages. Everything that is there right now is a transposition from English. So it is important that the program that we started is looking at mother tongue-based bilingual education as an overarching framework to move from that children bring innately from nature, from 7 months of pregnancy to schooling. And that has contributed to a large extent to our teaching trajectories and methodologies and pedagogies not being language specific. And this is the major change that you are doing. And we are saying go back to ECD, grades R, and continuing. So now it's going to be a continuous process where we are not preparing for the shift in grade 4, but the system is making sure that we go through with the children right up until to their end of schooling.
You can't argue what this could possibly do for even, pride of identity. For young South Africans. I mean, it's a powerful project if it's able to work. Give me that vision. In an ideal world, what does a workplace, a university look and sound like in South Africa?
Fortunately, we have Afrikaans as an example in this country. And I think extricating lessons from that is very important because we're not starting from nowhere. We have an example of the development of a language from Afrikaans not being a language to what it is today. So what you see with what we have managed as a country for Afrikaans, this is the ideal that we want for every child in the country. Most people ask, where will these children go? And I said exactly where Afrikaans kids have gone. They speak English better than those children who are not taught in their mother tongue because it is the mother tongue that lays the foundation for learning. So it's important that the vision for us, already in South Africa, we don't even need to go to Germany or to China or to Russia, where there's mother tongue education. We just need internally in the country to see that the phenomenal work that has been done for Afrikaans can be replicated so that all children, as they leave the system, they are proficient both in their mother tongue and English and any other language of the country.
What do you need to make this work? Because it's, like I said, it's a tall order. You make the example of Afrikaans, but then you go back to it being a project all the way from the 1920s.
Exactly.
So we've got a long way to go. Yes. I imagine academia needing to play an important role in intellectualizing and that sort of discussion around whether or not we do that and what we intellectualize and what we don't. But also to bring the skills in. I mean, already, just as the education system sits at the moment, we're struggling to encourage young people to become teachers. We're struggling to attract teachers into the work of entering classrooms. And then now you add this element.
One of the albatrosses in the system for black teachers right now, and this is why you are struggling to bring them into the system, is that when you have to learn a language and then learn through it, and then go and study the language before you teach in it. This is the double burden that Africans have to go through. We are hoping, and we know that research has proved, that if you manage in your language, it's very, very easy because you have that resource within you. So we are hoping, and we know that in developed countries, you do not teach your children in a language they do not understand. You don't have educators who are struggling with the language and then the content. So this will reduce most of the problems and the symptoms that you see in the system. We require a lot of funding. We are worried about most of the funded programs in Africa because they come with English. That has been where the vast majority of injection of funding is. So we need to reprioritize. And that's why we just had a conference, the minister organized a conference, both on Tuesday and Wednesday, engaging the donor funding agencies, higher education, everyone in civil society to understand that is where the seismic shift is now, right now. And we need everyone